Well, thanks for joining us once again and welcome to the 2019 Barbon Motorcycle Speed Hillclimb. Well, hello again and thanks for taking the time to join me. Now today we've made the journey from Scotland to Kendal in Cumbria for the 2019 Barbon Motorcycle Speed Hillclimb. Now this event of course is hosted by the well-respected Westmoreland Motor Club, who have been putting trials and scrambles and these type of hill climb events on in this area for more than 50 years, so they are well respected in that area. And when it comes to putting on these types of motorcycle events, the Westmoreland Club are well up to speed with what it takes to make these events a success. Now for me personally, this is a radical departure from my usual covering classic dirt bike racing, although anything involving motorcycles, I'm always up for the challenge. Now as we said earlier, this is a speed hill climb, so it is individual riders starting at the bottom of the hill down there, and they'll be let loose to go up to the top of the hill. I think the course is just over 800 meters long, and it will be individual riders coming up against the clock, so the quicker you get up the hill on your machine, the better. Now when it comes down to the bikes, there is a vast array of machines here today. There will be little 125 machines, 650cc machines, and maybe even bigger, so you're going to see a vast array of motorcycles taking part in this event. So anyway, I'm going to head down to the motorcycle paddock just to see the different types of motorcycles that will be taking part in this 2019 Barbon Motorcycle Speed Hillclimb.
Yes, thanks once more for joining me as we take a look at some of these fantastic looking machines that are soon to take part in this 2019 Barbon Motorcycle Speed Hillclimb. Now we're going to begin by having a look at David Lee's lovely Honda CB 504. Very nice looking machine this, and sounds absolutely brilliant, as you'll hear in part 2 of the video when we take a look at many of these machines doing their lap times up the Barbon Hill. Now in this Paddock video, you're going to see a very diverse collection of these lovely machines, from ancient vintage bikes right up to the newer supermoto type machines. And of course, as I mentioned, this is David Lee's lovely 500 4-cylinder Honda. Very purposeful looking front brake on this particular machine. Very quick as well, as hopefully you will see when we take a look at these bikes in action in part 2. Okay, next up we have Philip Newberry's lovely Yamaha RD 350. Now Philip from Dalton in Furness built this beautiful machine. Very quick bikes, these RD350s, LCs. A very common engine, still used in classic motorcycle racing to this very day. A very potent two-stroke motor in this bike. Some really nice trick pieces of machinery on this bike, and a very nice and very quick little Yamaha RD350 LC. Okay, our next bike up is Terry Walker's lovely Yamaha FZ 600. Now Terry is racing this machine in the class called Run What You Brung class, which is basically you turn up on the day with whatever motorcycle takes your fancy and enter it for the Barbon Hillclimb. So this is the class that Terry will be riding his lovely machine in, and look out for this bike in action on the track in part 2. Of course, these also were very quick machines back in the day, in the 1980s. Very potent and very fast little bikes. Now, one of the rules when you ride these bikes in the Run What You Brung class is that these machines must have a current MOT test certificate to take part in this particular class. Of course, the headlights and everything will be taped up here, as you can see, in case of an accident, and leaves glass on the track. But that's Terry's the lovely FZ 600 Yamaha. Okay, next up we have Chris Banks, lovely 500cc Bsa Jap Special. Now Chris's bike is a combination of a Bsa frame with that lovely John Alfred press switch Jap motor. Now Chris will be riding this machine in the classic 4-stroke up to 1972 class. Now if my memory serves me correctly, this engine will almost certainly be from the 1930s. John Alfred press switch, or Jap if you like. John Alfred press switch built many derivatives of these engines, and they were used in various types of motorcycles and agricultural machinery. Now, as you can see, Chris's bike has been modified by this linkage system to put the gear shifter on the left hand side as opposed to the original right hand configuration. Now make no mistake, although these engines are from the 1930s, they are very, very quick bikes, these with these long stroking single cylinder motors, and they produce a hell of a lot of torque, so this kind of engine is well suited to these type of hill climb events. As you can see, Chris has already put his personal touch on these very radical looking rear hubs. As you can see, Chris has also put his own personal touch on this rear chain guard by emblazing it with the Union Jack to fly the flag for Britain. So there you have it, that's Chris Banks's very nice 500cc Bsa Jap. Now something a bit more modern now, this is John Holt's very nice Honda CBR 400. Now John will also be racing this machine in the Run What You Brung class. Very nice looking bike, decked out in these lovely yellow and blue camel cigarette colours. Now this is a very interesting machine. This is Lancaster man Andrew Lupton's beautiful little Honda RS125. Now Andrew was telling me that this particular bike is a replica of one of the TT legend Joey Dunlop's racing machines, and Andrew has decked out his bike as a tribute to Joey, the great TT racing legend. Beautiful looking little machine, and sounds absolutely fantastic on the track, as you will hear in part 2. Of course, this was one of the first things that struck me when I attended this Barbon Hillclimb, because this was, of course, my first ever hill climb motorcycle event, and I was really quite amazed at the diversity of the different types of machine that were taking part in this event. I mean, we had those lovely old vintage bikes from the 1930s. We are now onto these lovely road racing replica machines, and of course we had many of those more modern supermoto type machines. So anyway, that's Andrew Lupton's RS125. Now moving right along here, this is Leroy Smart's lovely BMW F650. Now of course Leroy will be racing this in the Supermotos over 491cc class. A big brute of a bike, this machine. Big, powerful BMW bike. Now it looks to me like this machine is a single cylinder, twin exhaust port, type configuration of engine, although I stand to be corrected. But nevertheless, this big brute of a machine looks like it has all the attributes and the power to do well in these special kind of hill climb racing events. So anyway, that's another bike to look out for in part 2 for the Barbon Hillclimb. That's Leroy Smart's very nice BMW F650. Now our next featured machine is Alan Oversby's Triumph Westlake 750. Now Alan was telling me that the engine in this particular bike is a Triumph engine. It's a Triumph bottom end, a Triumph barrel, but has a Westlake cylinder head fitted, which Alan tells me was just a straight bolt-on affair. As you can see, the Westlake cylinder head bolted straight on top of that Triumph twin cylinder barrel. Now the frame, of course, is one of the legendary Rickman Matisse frames. The Rickman brothers, famous for making these high quality frames for all manner of motorcycles, whether it be trials, motocross or road racing. Now a dry clutch, of course, on this particular bike with the belt primary drive, but as you can see, the quality of the build on this particular bike is absolutely gorgeous. There just never seems to be a nut or bolt out of place on this bike. Looks like Alan has really taken his time and put this bike together superbly. So there you have it. That's Alan Oversby's Triumph Westlake 750. Now look out for this bike going up the Barbon Hill in part 2. Now moving on with something a bit more modern now. This is David Pete's KTM Duke 796 cc. Now David, of course, will be racing this bike in the Supermoto class over 491cc. Now David has certainly brought along enough horsepower to get up the Barbon Hill. This is an absolute brute of a machine, this big single cylinder KTM. I'm sure that David will manage his way up Barbon Hill pretty quickly on this big powerful bike. Now more supermotos. This 206 numbered bike is Andrew Kerrick's Husqvarna Supermoto 250. Very nicely turned out machine. And this 207 machine is Danielle Kerrick's KTM Supermoto 350. Of course, both these riders will be taking part in the Supermoto class here at Barbon. Okay, our next featured bike is Michael Tyrrell's lovely MZ ETZ 250. These bikes, of course, a very cheap type of motorcycle to do these hill climbs, and if you're looking for a machine to do this type of event on a budget, then these MZs would be the way to go. Now of course Michael will be racing this 250 MZ in the modern up to 400cc class, but how modern is this machine I'm not exactly sure, but certainly looks a throwback from the 1970s. Now number 991 here is Jack Butterworth's lovely Triumph Matisse 500. Lovely little bike sitting here in the lovely Barbon sunshine. Now I'm assuming that this next rider is related to Jack Butterworth, but this is Ben Butterworth's lovely looking 580cc Shenny Bsa, and there's a beautiful sound comes from this machine when you hear it trekking up the Barbon Hill. Now of course, with myself being a classic scrambles kind of guy, I'm used to seeing these lovely Shenny Bsas with knobbly tyres on and not configured for these kind of hill climb events. But nevertheless, it's a beautiful machine, this Ben Butterworth Shenny Bsa. Okay, we're back to the vintage class again, and this is Grant Sellers CSI 500cc Norton. Now, as opposed to what the SRS on the fuel tank stands for, I'm not exactly sure. Now of course Grant will be racing this machine in the vintage up to 1940s class, so Grant doing a bit of last minute maintenance on the bike prior to practice starting. But it's certainly great that these riders keep these old classic machines racing on the track rather than have them stuck in some kind of museum. It's a tribute to the riders that they keep these old classics going. So that's Grant Sellers CSI 500 Norton. Now this was another unusual machine that I spotted. This is Robert Bushrod's Romeo Monster 50. It's a 50cc little motorcycle. Very unusual bike. I think the engine could possibly be a Moto Marini, but I of course stand to be corrected on that particular point. But a very unusual little machine, and only 50cc, so it will be interesting to see how it copes with the Barbon Hill. Now of course, before any of the bikes can take part in the 2019 Barbon Hillclimb, all the bikes have to be scrutineered by the club's officials, and as you can see here, the riders and their machines being checked to make sure all the machines are safe to ride. Checking out the brakes and tyres and every other conceivable type of thing that could go wrong on these bikes. But this is just part of the club rules and regulations that each and every one of these machines must be checked prior to racing. Number 125 there, that's Andrew Fitzpatrick's 600cc Levis. Certainly another one of the oldest machines that are soon to take part in this 2019 Barbon Hillclimb. Okay, back to the machines again. Now, this is another very rare bike. This is Michael Schofield's 350cc Armaki Corsa. Now, Armaki Harley-Davidson produced lightweight motorcycles during the 1960s and 1970s. Now, Harley-Davidson owned half the stock in the Armaki company, so hence the name Armaki Harley-Davidson. Now, the Italian company built mainly single-cylinder machines from 50cc to about 350cc, although they did build a few other twin-cylinder models. Now, the bikes were originally sold as Armaki Harley-Davidsons, although this title was later changed to AMF Harley-Davidson for their marketing purposes. Now, Michael will be racing this bike in the classic 4-stroke up to 1972 class. So, I mean, I've actually heard this bike on the track and it sounds absolutely gorgeous as it heads up the Barbon Hill. But that's Michael Schofield's Armaki Corsa 350. Okay, we're back once more to the budget side of motorcycle hill climbing. This is Andrew Henworth's MZ ETZ 250. Now, these of course are very cheap and cheerful machines to get you racing if you fancy having a go at these type of hill climb events. These bikes of course are not as expensive as many of the other machines that are going to take part, but nevertheless I'm sure that Andrew will get just about as much fun out of his nice little 250 as anybody would on their 1000cc machine. So a very nice pair of budget racers there. That's a lovely pair of MZ 250 bikes. Now, this is a bike we just witnessed there at scrutineering. This is Andrew Fitzpatrick's a beautiful Levis 600. Now, this is certainly one of the older bikes in the Barbon Hillclimb this year. Now, these British-made Levis motorcycles were manufactured by Butterfields Limited of Birmingham, England, and for many years they were the leading figure in British motorcycle manufacturing. But Levis mainly built two-stroke machines from 1911 and later added a line of four-stroke models in 1928, which ran right up to 1941 when their production then ceased. Now, this featured model is from 1933 and is possibly, surely, our oldest bike at this Barbon Hillclimb event. Now, of course, Andrew will be racing this machine in the vintage up to a 1940s class, so it'll be interesting to have a listen to Andrew's lovely machine as he heads up the Barbon Hill. So that's another vintage classic. That's Andrew Fitzpatrick's Levis 600. Something a bit more modern now. This is Adam Bentley's Honda NSR MC16 250. A very rare road racing machine, decked out in, of course, in these lovely Rothmans colours. And of course Adam will be racing this particular bike in the modern up to 400 cc class, so yet another one of these lovely bikes to look out for as they head up the hill in part 2. Now, when you mention Michael, there can be only one owner to a bike such as this, and this of course is Wolfsport owner Bill Brown's 400 Michael, which he has converted specifically for doing these hill climb events. Bill has changed the front hub on this bike to a hub from a big Honda motorcycle. Bill says that the original hubs on the front of these Michaels weren't the best for stopping power, but this quite large hub with this high diameter braking surface will help him stop a lot more efficiently. So of course that's another one of the bikes to look out for heading up the Barbon Hill in the part 2 version of this video. Now this bike here, for me personally, has to qualify as one of the nicest looking machines at the Barbon Hillclimb. This is Howard Ossel's lovely Bsa Be 5500, and it's quite unusual for me to see one of these lovely Bsa engines in a road racing frame, as I am usually used to seeing these in scrambles or trials type of frames, but nevertheless an absolutely gorgeous looking little machine. And the sticker on the headstock there says that first gear is most definitely up. Now of course Howard will be racing this machine in the classic 4-stroke up to 1972 class. So this is another one of the bikes to look forward to in part 2. Okay, our next featured machine is Robert Bradley's Eigenbau 500. Now, as opposed to what an Eigenbau is, I am not exactly sure, but I do know that the engine is a 500 Westlake motor. Of course, these big single-cylinder 500 Westlake engines were widely used in speedway bikes in the 70s and 80s, and possibly even before, so a very well proven engine fitted inside this machine. Of course, this particular bike has been built specifically for doing these hill climb events. Now, as you can see, Robert has made the conversion on the gear shifter to have the gear selector on the left hand side of the bike as opposed to its original right side fitting. Dry clutches again on these machines. But again, a very nice looking machine and as I mentioned earlier, this bike was purpose built to take part in these hill climb and classic road racing events. So there you have it. That's Robert Bradley's 500cc Eigenbau Westlake. Okay, last but not least in looking at these Paddock bikes is Tony Fox's lovely little Suzuki Ts 185. Another cheap and cheerful kind of machine to get you started into this classic hill climb racing. Now these are well proven little two-stroke engines, these TS 185s. Of course, were normally used in road going bikes when they were original machines, but nevertheless a very light and very quick little machine which is soon to take part in the 2019 Barbon Hillclimb. So hope you've enjoyed having a look at these Paddock bikes. Look out for more of these bikes on the track in part 2. This video was brought to you in association with Wolfsport, the world's #1 supplier for all your off-road and leisure sportswear. Just visit their online website for more details.